Furniture rental is not a brand new concept. It has existed, but it feels like it existed in the 1950s. The business model that previously exists is very antiquated, and it's not catering to people that want something design forward or actually care about how their space looks. It's purely function over fashion.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Culture Codes, the podcast. I'm Felicitas Olszewski, unpacking cultural influence at the intersection of brand, product, and innovation every week. You can find us on culturecodes.substack.com. Today, we're diving into a question that feels increasingly relevant in a world built on subscriptions, flexibility, and constant change. Do we really need to own the things we use? And that's what I'm going to talk today about with Poppy Furniture, a UK-based B2B2C furniture rental platform that's challenging traditional ownership models and bringing a circular, more flexible approach to how spaces are furnished. By partnering with businesses, from property operators to flexible workspace providers, Poppy delivers beautifully designed, fully furnished environments directly to end users, blending business infrastructure with consumer experience. In this episode, we'll explore what Poppy's model says about the future of ownership, how the subscription model is reshaping physical spaces, not just digital services, and why access might just be the new status symbol in modern business culture. Let's get into it. Welcome, Arthur. Welcome, Samantha. Good to have you.
Thank you
Hi,
so much,
Felicitas. Great to
Felicitas.
be here. Thank you very much for having us.
So good to see you guys. I obviously know you guys for a while and have been part of your journey for a little bit. And I'm really excited about what you're building and how you're, changing the norms and the model. But for all of our listeners who might not know you that well yet, let's start at the beginning. Sam, can you tell us a little bit about what cultural or market shift made you believe that furniture rental wasn't just a niche idea, but really a structural opportunity that led to the idea of Poppy?
Yeah, firstly, thank you so much for the intro, Felicitas. I think it kind of came out of a bit of a personal experience. I've been a renter in, very expensive cities for the last 15 years, but I've also had a passion for having my space feel like mine and no one else's. This was exacerbated, I think, for me and a lot of people during COVID, when we were stuck in the same room for what felt like 24 hours a day. And there was a greater appetite to have your space feel much more like yours. It be a reflection of your personal taste, your personality. And furniture has such a huge part to play in this. And so I think a lot of people have that appetite, but they are renting. And so there's this burden to owning a piece because you don't know what you're going to do with it at the end of your lease. For me specifically, I didn't know if I was going to live in that flat. I ended up leaving that city that I was in. So it would have just been a nightmare to spend a bunch of money on beautiful furniture and then having to get rid of it when I was leaving. I think one alternative that a lot of people do, myself included, is go the secondhand furniture route, which is a much more cost-effective way to acquire furniture versus, buying it retail from a luxury furniture maker. But one thing that doesn't actually address is, again, what happens at the end of your lease or when you leave. And this is what the furniture rental market and what we're doing at Poppy is really addressing. For many people, even if they've gotten an item, and most likely a bulky item, even though they might have acquired it quite cheaply, what do you do with it at the end of your lease? And a few options are, one, paying to put it in storage. I've definitely done that. I know Arthur's done that too. You end up paying more to put for storage than what the item is actually worth in the first place. A second option is attempting to sell it on Facebook Marketplace. I know I've, tried many times to shift my furniture, turn my tiny little London flat into a store. And sometimes it's not even worth, going to the effort of taking photos, selling it. And you never end up getting the price that you end up wanting. And then what happens a lot of the time is those items just end up on the street. And it's pretty evident when you're walking around a big city, seeing the amount of bulky furniture that's just been discarded on that street. And then that ultimately ends up in landfill. And so this is really what we're addressing at Poppy, is that burden to owning an item. If you rent with Poppy, if you don't need that item at the end of your lease, you're leaving the country, it doesn't work in your next flat, we pick it up, refurbish, and then it goes on to be rented time and time again. So it's really that that perfect storm of there's an appetite for people to have a space that feels like their own. They're spending more time in their home than they ever have before,
True.
coupled with the that people are renting for longer than they have before and thinking about what do I do with that very, very bulky item at the end of my lease or when I inevitably move out.
That's so true. It's so true, especially younger people, Gen Z, are spending more time at home. You see the rise of these at-home cafes and all of these things going on. You know, they want to
Yeah.
host and entertain at home, so the home is becoming increasingly important. You're absolutely right. That's so interesting. And I love sort of like the focus you have on the business model. Tell us a little bit more about this, Arthur. You're operating as a B2B2C platform, but at the moment, I think you're focusing a little bit more on the B2B side. Tell us a bit more about what that means, like working with property operators, workspace providers, whilst, at the same time being a company that in the end wants to bring all this beautiful, well-designed furniture to the end consumer.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think to start, it's really clear to identify what Poppy's role is in this whole model and where we sort of set out. And Samantha beautifully explained a little bit of why we're doing this. Essentially, we're coming at this as would-be users of the service, right? We've experienced the first-hand problems of furniture ownership between tenancies, in private residential, and as landlords. And we wanted to create a solution that improves convenience, flexibility, environmental efficiency, and capital efficiency when moving between rental properties and still wanting to create an amazing home that you feel comfortable in and look forward to sort of living in, but doing so without the hassle and the logistical burden and the strain that usually comes with all of that.
Yeah.
So first and foremost, it's about connecting the makers, manufacturers, and designers of beautiful built-to-last furniture to the end user, whether it's via a build-to-rent service provider, an operator, an apart hotel service provider, a landlord, or eventually the individual tenant. We, as a platform in the middle, connect the maker and the manufacturer and the supplier to the renter. We provide the billing logic, subscription tooling, the reverse logistics capabilities, and the data and reporting and metrics that the makers and suppliers of quality furniture need to run a successful rental model alongside the linear operation that they currently run. And so when it comes to connecting the supplier and the furniture brand and the furniture maker to the end user, we've built out an amazing network of suppliers of already validated, proven, and high consumer demand manufacturers. And those typically have thought of and considered running a version of this model themselves, but haven't had the resource, the technical capability, time, effort to go out and actually create it alongside what they're currently doing with bringing these products to market. So have seen the commercial upside, the environmental benefit, and the whole new audience that we can connect them to, where previously they wouldn't have been able to serve due to the fact that their items come with a high price tag and are not tailored really for short-term use. So so by reaching the end user, either via the developer or the landlord or the property manager, we can still service those tenants and those users who are in a state of transient, who are urban professionals, who could be expats, are moving regularly, are looking for excellent service, high levels of convenience, and want to have a really comfortable home that they can live in and enjoy being in for the duration of their stay at that point in their life. And so there are slight variations to how we position and how we service the customer based on whether it's a developer with 50 to 100 units of 1-2 bed flats that require a full fit out solution, or if it's a landlord that wants to do their property that they're servicing for a buy to let and wants to furnish the whole space via Poppy's fit out solution.
That makes complete sense. When we're thinking in terms of, and you touched upon this a little bit, sort of access over ownership, I think we're seeing a broader cultural shift in that, people are shifting more to access because it gives them more flexibility. Samantha, you spoke a little bit about the hassle of, getting rid of things or understanding, how to resell it at the end of a lease. Do you think that this shift is primarily economic, environmental, or generationally driven, or maybe a little bit of everything? And how does
Yeah.
Poppy sit within it?
Yeah, I love this question because I think it's really a little bit of all three, and I
Hmm.
think it's been I mean we sort of generational side of things first. I think the younger generation, so Gen Z, millennials, we've grown up with streaming services. We've looked at different sharing options. We've grown up subscribing to stuff, and
Yeah.
ownership has never really been, or the drive for ownership has never really been the default. It's never really been something that we kind of are aspiring to have or achieve, because it doesn't really carry the same level of status symbol that perhaps it once did for other generations. I think for business, it's definitely economic. I think the main drivers are capital efficiency, better levels of flexibility, and avoiding that
Hmm.
depreciating asset that sits on the balance sheet and needs to be replaced every 3 to 5 years during a fit out when they're running a buy-to-let scheme. But for the most compelling, I think, for both, and that really transcends for the renter, the generational consumer, and the business, is the environmental argument. And
Yeah.
this is definitely the most compelling over a longer period of time. It's rarely the thing that drives the decision in the first instance,
Mhm.
but it's once you, and I mean, it depends on who you're talking to, but once you kind of allocate all three and look for some kind of cherry on the top, this is the overarching benefit that adds the most long-term value to the service and solution.
Yeah, makes sense. I'm curious to talk a little bit more about flexibility. Samantha, from a CEO perspective, what do you think is the strongest business argument for companies to choose rental over buying outright?
Yeah, I mean, very, very simply put, it's cost, right? Like renting with Poppy versus buying outright is less expensive for a business perspective. The reason why this is more affordable is because typically landlords, service-based accommodation providers, they'll be buying
Right.
furniture, typically lower end furniture
Mhm.
outright, which is a large upfront cost. And because it is on the lower end of quality, those items depreciate very, very quickly and then need to be replaced every 2, 3 years, especially when we're thinking about service-based accommodation. These are like high traffic areas. You need to have furniture in there that is built to last. And typically
Mhm.
these people that are buying furniture, it's not. And so that's like a really clear way that renting with Poppy, not only are you getting better quality furniture that will last, if you don't need it at the end of that 12-month rental, we'll come in, refurnish it with a brand new bundle to suit your tenant or your guest or your changing needs. So that's kind of the biggest factor, is that it is more affordable for these
Yeah.
businesses and operators to rent versus buy. You know, when we speak to property operators, they do and are starting to care more about waste reduction, sustainability requirements, ESG targets, things like that. That is something that people are starting to care about, but it should not be the sole reason that anybody is
Yeah.
ever renting furniture. It should be in addition to that, it's more commercially viable and sustainable.
That makes so much sense. Wow. So what you're saying is that furniture is essentially the first thing where, property owners try to squeeze cost. And so they're going for lower, cheaper models. And then
Yeah,
essentially they have more waste at the end of it. Wow. That's so interesting. I mean, it makes
correct.
so much sense when you're saying it, or I wasn't really aware of it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. And not only like in totality are they going to be spending less to rent versus buy, you don't have that upfront cost as well. So in terms of cash,
Exactly. Yeah.
something that these operators really, really care about,
Mhm.
you're just paying a monthly fee to us to have that furniture for whenever you're using it, as opposed to having, big cash outflows every 2 years to buy that furniture.
Makes so much sense. Furnitures, when I think about it, right? Like every move is in a way a hustle, right? You need to think about, oh my God, do I just have to, people come and, ideally you want to pack them everything down and, turn a blind eye and then they unpack everything. And, I don't want to have anything to deal with it, having done, big moves across countries and continents. But yeah,
Yes.
furniture is pretty heavy, complex and physical. What's been the hardest operational challenge in building a scalable rental platform, that also offers installing some of these things? And how have you addressed some of these challenges?
So yeah, I think you're right, definitely, to call out the logistical operational element of this model, because we're talking about what is quite a heavy
Mhm.
space, large space requiring asset that takes up time. It's heavy, physically heavy to carry and move around, and it's expensive to move around and to get it right. Because we are talking about a high velocity, a high number of items that are going in and being used, enjoyed, and then going back, which at the moment doesn't ever happen unless it's for a problem.
Right.
There's nothing's really designed for that collections piece just yet to do it deliberately. And that's where the whole thing breaks down, because these suppliers, these manufacturers, these makers of quality furniture are designing models around a linear operation where they extract material, they design a piece, they market that piece, and they sell it to a customer, and then they expect to never see it again. Of course, there are occasions where items will be sent back by the customer because there's been a bit of damage maybe in transit, or the item doesn't quite fit or match what the seller may have been advertising online. And actually, this is another interesting point for Felicitas to look at, perhaps on this kind of cultural line, is the
Mm.
rise of returns among younger audience,
You're
and
right. Yeah.
with the rise of TikTok Shop and Instagram and things, and the impact that's having on the furniture industry. Because once an item's been returned and it's sitting in the seconds market, it's a real burden for the
Yeah.
suppliers and makers. It's like complete massive
You know
cost.
what happened to us the other day? We were ordering something and then considering, that we actually don't really need it, and we were returning it.
Yeah,
And that one we bought it from offered us money to keep it.
Yeah,
That's where
I
it's
was
really.
about to
at.
say it.
Wow.
I
Yeah,
was about to say just because of
exactly.
the shipping
That's
cost,
Yeah.
exactly,
and
yeah.
it's not only the shipping cost, it's the storage costs on their side as well, and they don't wanna
Yeah.
then, pay to have the storage. I mean, I've never heard them paying for you to keep it, but I've had a few circumstances where they've said, "No, please just keep it." And then I've ended up, like, selling it on Facebook Marketplace for nothing because I didn't wanna store it in my home either.
Yeah.
But, yeah, it's a
Yeah.
big burden, makes it so attractive to our suppliers because they're seeing these items that are in perfectly good condition, and they're like,
Yeah. No,
this
exactly.
is a great item, like, I don't wanna have to store this. Let's get it into a unit, right? Let's get it into a property for somebody to rent, and then any sort of income that drives to the supplier, it's like, "Oh, this is an added bonus. This is amazing." So they can pass
Yeah.
that down when we're
Yeah.
talking about what that rental price is.
Yeah. And so us being able to provide that and offer that to our suppliers is a huge, huge value add. And it's a big opportunity for us to connect third-party logistics providers to a growing audience of rental customers and
Yeah.
optimize for return and reuse.
That's so interesting. And so when we connected initially, I want to say it's probably around a year ago, we've been a year into our move from Europe here into Los Angeles, and previously having moved from Germany to the Netherlands, from the Netherlands to London and back. And, and having obviously looked at interim solutions, because when you move all your stuff into a container, it takes time until it arrives, right? So you need some sort of like solutions, and you don't want to just buy stuff that you then have to throw out, at least not when you're a circularity advocate. But what then struck me really about your business model was, I would say that me and my family were quite, sort of like designed, like it matters what I put in my space, right? And it
Yeah,
matters sort of like
yeah.
design angle really matters. And a lot of the, I would say, more legacy competitors in your space don't offer that. It's sort of like function over form. And I think for us, it was more the opposite. And so let's talk a little bit about that, because I do think that's an interesting competitive advantage that you have, that you are not only functionally furnishing, yes, everybody needs a bed and a desk and, a lamp, but you're really sort of like curating spaces. Can you talk a little bit more about what you're working on, the collaborations you've done with interior designers? Let's talk a little bit more about that design element and how that drives up a business bonus for you and helps maybe convince businesses and consumers that rental doesn't mean compromise.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I love that you brought that up, Felicitas, like the amount of moving. And, furniture rental is not a brand new concept. It has existed, but it feels like it existed in the 1950s. And the
100%.
type of the type of business that it's the business model that previously exists is very antiquated, and it's not catering to people that want something design forward or actually care about how their space looks. It's purely function over fashion. So I love that you brought that up. I mean, in terms of renting with Poppy, we're really catering to the modern tenant, somebody that really wants to care about how their space looks and feels, and not having any compromise on furniture. I would actually say renting with Poppy means that you're not compromising on design, whereas sometimes when you're buying outright, you have to compromise because of budget restraints, right? You end up having to go down the cheaper route or not get your dream wish list of furniture items because the upfront cost is just too high. In terms of the interior designers that we're working with, so we have a large network of interior designers that we work with and partner with that are using all of our items from our various different furniture brands and actually curating entire turnkey bundles so that, if you don't have that sort of design ability or you don't have the time to actually design your own
Yeah,
space,
true. It takes a lot of time.
Yeah.
oh my gosh, it's so much of an effort. I always say, like, on one side of the spectrum, our Poppy customer is my boyfriend if he didn't live with me. He likes being in a well-curated space, but he doesn't want to put in an ounce of effort into making it that way.
Yeah.
So, a customer like that could browse our interior designer bundles and, have a very well curated home within just a couple of clicks, right? And then on the other side of the spectrum, I guess somebody like me or even like you, Felicitas, who really enjoys that process of building their own space, it's a high priority for them and it's actually something that they really enjoy. You could look at our 1,000+ items that we have in our catalog and like carefully curate your own space based on your budget requirements, size, space, whatever that is. The other thing I will say is because we are really going after renters and that's like a very large growing demographic of people, typically you wouldn't associate a rental home with an interior design service, but that shouldn't be the case. Shouldn't be the case. You think of engaging in interior design services, wait till I'm in my forever home. And like, who knows when that's going to be for most people? I feel like, that gets longer and longer away, just given how expensive it is to buy a home these days. And so it should be more accessible for people to have interior design services. And we're having that be a much more scalable thing by people renting entirely curated bundles by interior designers.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. And I love this aspect. And I think personal taste and style and being able to work with experts who understand that, right? It's deeply personal. I think it's such an added benefit and becomes so much part of because home is part of your identity.
Yeah.
Which leads me to the next point. I think this is maybe a little bit of a philosophical one. When we're thinking about traditional status symbols and what's important to people and what's important to generations over time. When we're thinking about ownership in a model like yours becoming less central to, my identity, or maybe it becomes something that I'm identifying myself with more, right? Maybe that is a new status symbol to me. How do you think about that? Like, how do you think a model like Poppy pays into the cultural values of the generations that you're targeting?
Yeah, it's a super interesting question for this task. In terms of status, I think we could probably see a lot of parallels with what's happened in the luxury fashion industry and what's happening in furniture. I think previously it's been very, very hard and inaccessible to acquire, a luxury handbag. And then the rise of fashion rental or fashion accessory platforms is making that more accessible. And I think you could see a similar parallel with what we're trying to do at Poppy. You might have, a huge wish list of designer chairs that you would only dream of having in your home one day, but not be in a position to make that investment. We're increasing access to that. And I also think in terms of when we talk about like permanence, even if you are in your forever home, this doesn't mean that this model won't work for you. I know like my style and my my personal style, what I like changes very regularly. Even if I am in my forever home and I'm like, okay, I'm going to make an investment in all these designer pieces that I like because I'm in a financial position to do so, or whatever your circumstance is, that doesn't mean that you should.
It's
how are
true.
you going to like an item and be like, all right, I'm going to be stuck with this for the next 15 years? People's style change, it's ever evolving. And I think with the Poppy model, like your style can evolve with you and it's not at the detriment of your bank balance or being super wasteful either. So that's really what we're addressing because I think that's how people live today anyways. It
I
Yeah.
should
love
be
that. Yes, it's all about self-expression. It's something that actually
yeah,
moves, gives you that flexibility versus you
exactly.
looking at all of your, I mean, look, I'm going to go through this with my son's bedroom, right? So he's turning 3 in a week and, it turns sort of like from a room that's mostly, beige and white with some baby
Yeah.
things and a crib. We have already a bed that we can turn into a toddler bed, right? So we thought ahead there. But now it's about, okay, you want to sort of like start to furnish it, right? With little furniture and things like this. But then maybe in like 3 to 5 years, as he doesn't want this anymore. And who knows if he's going to
Yeah.
be into jungle or
Yeah.
dinosaurs, right? Maybe he wants
Yeah.
astronauts. So
Yeah.
I think there's
And
a wide range.
he might be into a new thing every year, like who knows?
Yes, hopefully
Yeah.
not. But yes, you're right. And I think there is so much to be said about this, right? And I think we also know from, even if you're not a kid anymore, like you have style and taste preferences,
Yeah.
colors, like certain things, that you just get tired of. And so I think that's such a great point. And you can, like with that service, you can just swap out certain items as you want.
Yeah. Or even
Yeah,
Yeah.
upgrade, right? Like even if you're in one
upgrade.
space,
Yeah.
yeah, even if you're in one space and, maybe your salary goes up, you have a little bit more funds to spend on furniture. You might start at like an entry level bundle, but then as your taste grows, it changes. You're like, okay, I want to spend a little bit more. I want to have like a revamped space. Like having that option to upgrade, I think is a really nice one as well.
Mhm.
Yeah, and
Or
I think
downgrade.
definitely there's less of a need to show your level of status via the things that you own, right? It's like that used to definitely be a key driver, and I think you can still have amazing stuff in your home and talk about it and show it and enjoy the experience and share that with your family and friends and things. But yeah, the kind of status symbol of this is mine, I bought this, I own this, where it makes me kind of puts me in society. I think that kind of drive to use items as that status symbol is no longer really there. But yeah, you can still share that with
Yeah.
um share that experience through subscription.
Yeah,
Yeah, and I
absolutely.
think, like, flexibility is a luxury, right? Instead of owning something, having that flexibility, like, that to me is a luxury, right?
That is so true. And I think that also becomes maybe a principle, right, of how to look at it from a positioning perspective. If flexibility is a luxury and you have the option to still have it all and switch it out and upgrade,
Yeah.
why would you go for permanent objects in your home? I think that's so true. Do you think that that's a principle that sort of like leads us to think about what the future of space is, that we're thinking about? Do you think it's going to be something that will be adopted on broader level? Do you think this has the opportunity to go mainstream? Do you think there's a broader mindset shift needed? What do you think? How do you think about it?
Yeah. So at the moment, yeah, I mean, we have complete conviction that the future of access to quality items is going to be adopted via a subscription and rental model, especially within the kind of residential build to rent infrastructure, co-living spaces where, yeah, this idea of greater flexibility being a luxury, improved levels of tenant customization, extend product life cycles, drive up capital efficiency, environmental efficiency, and
Hmm.
prevent this kind of linear take, make, use, dispose mentality and disposal mentality that's currently servicing these spaces and apartments for renters. I think there's still a long way for us to go before it becomes mainstream, but in 5 to 10 years, absolutely. Conviction is that this will be a household first front of mind concept and people will be turning to models like ours, platforms like ours to reap the operational benefits, to enjoy the furniture that we're able to provide and yeah, design for a more flexible, environmentally efficient future. And it won't be a sort of question of whether this is a challenger model or not. It will be, and something that we have to be aware of, it will be more of a question of which platform do we use, right? I think it
Yes. Absolutely.
Uh,
Yeah.
Absolutely.
we're not going to be
Yeah.
the only operator in this space, but yeah, it's really exciting, and we are at the. I mean, we've seen some amazing stuff in the fashion world around re-commerce, reuse, textiles, and yeah, it's
True.
beginning
eBay
to
just bought Depop.
Yeah.
exactly, yeah.
Huge news. Yeah.
So yeah, there's a saying in the furniture world: what happens in fashion tends to repeat itself in furniture 5 years later. So we're getting to that point, and exciting to be leading from the front here in the UK to begin with, and building these solutions to achieve that.
Hello, listeners. Where can they find you?
Yeah. So we're live on. We have our website. We're live on socials: LinkedIn, Instagram, TikTok, and we are a team of 3 at the moment. And yeah, we're working on across all fronts, and delighted to hear from operators, build-to-rent operators, service accommodation providers, landlords, suppliers of quality furniture, and of course, any interested investors to scale this solution, help us reach the next stage and bring more items into a circular subscription service. So yeah, please reach out via the website, get in touch. Either Sam or I would love to speak, and it's been a delight to share the podcast with you, Felicitas. So thank you so much for having us on.
Yeah, thank
Of
you so
course.
much.
I will be sharing the links in the show notes. And yeah, thank you both. I will stay close on the journey, as you know. And thank you so much. And if you like this episode, then please like, share, and subscribe. You can find it, of course, on Substack, but also on Spotify and YouTube. Thank you, Arthur. Thanks, Samantha. Have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you soon.
Thank you so
Thank you.
much. We'll see you
Bye.
soon.
Thank
Bye.
you.